Are you originally from Barnsley?
I am indeed, yeah. So I'm from Barnsley. Would you like me to give a little bit of an introduction?
Yep, you can.
Yeah, of course. So hello everyone. My name is George. I'm from Barnsley, from specifically a small little market town in Barnsley called Penistone. Grew up there for basically throughout my whole childhood. Stayed there. We never really moved away from Penistone. And then when I was 18, I went and trained at drama school and moved down to a place called Guildford in Surrey, which is just outside of London. Then after that, I graduated and moved into London.
Everything happens.
That is a good question. And I think there's a big perception, a big misperception that London is where everything happens. I absolutely don't think that that's true at all. Some of the best art that I've ever seen created has been in Yorkshire. I think Yorkshire is such an incredible cultural hotspot for the arts. There has been, I think, something that I've noticed, and certainly there was a pressure when I finished drama school to move to London. And I think there's a lot of people, a lot of actors that once they finish drama school, everyone says, you've got to be in London because London is where it is. And I actually fell into that pressure and I moved into London with a couple of my friends from drama school. And don't get me wrong, because where we lived in London was lovely and it was beautiful. And the guys that I lived with were just top class guys. So I had a great time. But I soon realized I didn't need to be in London. There wasn't a big need to be there. Because all it was if you got an audition, some people might get auditions once a week, some people might get auditions once a month. So whatever that is, all it means if you're based in London is that you're going to be at an audition within 30 minutes, as opposed to if I live up in Yorkshire, I'm getting a train down and it's taking me 2 hours, 2.5 hours door to door. And so really, if you're only going to be getting an audition maybe like once a month, I don't think it's a necessity that you need to be 30 minutes within the audition as opposed to 2 hours and 30 minutes. So it's just saving you 2 hours every single month, really, is what it is by being in London. And so I don't think there's a need to be in London because I don't think everything is created there. And there's certainly so many different opportunities all around the country and so many beautiful pieces of art that are being made all around the country. So I'm a big believer in kind of pushing for this breaking down of this notion of this idea that London is the cultural hotspot of the UK, because I don't think it's true. And a lot of the most creative people that I know aren't based in London. Having said that, I do currently live in London, but that's more for personal reasons because I feel at this point in my life, it's got a lot of things outside of my work that I actually really enjoy. I don't think it'll be my home forever, if I'm being honest with you. But I do enjoy London, but I don't think it's the cultural hotspot for everything.
I've been looking on the doing some research and said you were a trained musician as well.
Yes, yeah, I am indeed. I came at music actually a little bit of a different way to most people. I think a lot of people will go through the school system, learning grades and going through all that and get to kind of the higher grades, and then that's how they then will maybe specialize in a certain part of the instrument that they're playing. But I never went through that. I did a little bit growing up. I did a bit of piano and then stopped that. I did a little bit of guitar in primary school, but stopped that. In secondary school, I actually did drums. I got up to grade 3 in drums, but it took me probably a good year to do that. And if I'm being honest with you, and I've not actually told anyone this, but I was really bad at practicing. Awful at practicing. I used to tell my drum teacher every single week, he'd say, you've been practicing this week? And I'd go, yeah, been practicing. And then that would be the next time that I'd pick up the drumsticks would be the week after when I'm in the lesson. So I wasn't particularly too great with my discipline when I was growing up with drums. I think I didn't have the passion. I had it initially, and then I think I lost it, which was a shame because I think it's an awesome instrument. And then maybe when I got to about 15, 16, I started singing a little bit. And I had a friend, a guy called Freddie, who played guitar. And we used to kind of on our lunch breaks, we would go and sit in a little room somewhere and would get Freddie's guitar and would just play through a few different songs. And for me, that's kind of where the love for music started. And then I kind of thought, okay, this is amazing that Freddie has been able to play all these songs and give me his time. But then I thought, well, I actually quite like to accompany myself. So I thought, okay, I think I'd actually quite like to pick up piano again. So got a piano teacher who was actually a jazz piano teacher. And I said to him, I said, I don't want to go through all the grades. I don't want to learn all the theory behind it. I just want to be able to play along so that I can sing. And so he said, okay, the best way to do that is to learn chords as opposed to learning sheet music and everything like that. So he showed me all the different chords around the piano, and he showed me major and minor, and then a few different variations from that. And that's kind of where I started to learn my music craft, really. And then since then, probably maybe within 2 or 3 years, I was able to play most songs that I could find the chords for. And from there, I then started to be able to sight read chords, which is just when you get the chord straight up in front of you, having never seen it before, and you can just jump straight into playing it. And then I started looking for gigs locally in Yorkshire and got a few gigs here and there, at kind of restaurants, at bars, at hotels. And I actually really enjoyed going along, and I found it amazing. Bearing in mind that I was only maybe 16, 17, that someone would want to pay me money to go and sit and do what I love doing, which is playing piano and singing for 3 hours in their restaurant. And I started to kind of go around the Yorkshire circuit. I went to Leeds and Sheffield, Huddersfield, Barnsley, and there are a few different places that I used to get regular gigs at. And then it got to the point where I then went to drama school and focused a little bit more on my acting. And then once I finished drama school, I started to pick up a few more gigs in London. And that's kind of how I got into the music side of things. It was more from a curiosity of wanting to learn an instrument so that I could sing. And I had that passion for wanting to be able to sing, and it was something that I really enjoyed doing. And I think that's where my discipline changed. You know, I was talking before about the drums, and I wasn't particularly too great at my discipline there. I think when it came to the piano, I had so much passion to be able to sing. That's what motivated me to sit down and learn and get better at the piano.
Is acting and playing instruments hard? Because I've seen Northern Broadside productions, and they're very musical and actory.
They are indeed, yeah. It is a skill that you've got to perfect over many, many years. And I am I don't consider myself up there. I look at people that I think are so much more talented and more trained in the craft, actually. And maybe within the past 5 years, I'd say there's been something called actor musician courses that have come up, which is where you've got, and we had one at drama school when I started back in 2015, and an actor musician course is training actors and also training musicians together in one. I didn't do that. I trained in just a purely acting course, but the people on those courses, some of my friends in those courses are incredibly talented musicians. I'm talking about grade 8 in like 3 or 4 instruments. And when you go and see one of their showcases or one of their shows of actor musicians, they'll be playing the cello for 1 minute, and then they will just jump across to the drums and they'll start playing the drums, and then they'll chuck the drumsticks away and they'll suddenly start playing guitar. It's incredible. And Northern Broadside, yeah, they use actor musicians all the time. It started to get really popular, actually, to use actor musicians to tour shows, because financially it can work out slightly better because you're not having to hire the actor and a completely separate band. So sometimes when you're touring shows, which financially can be quite tough, it's a bit more financially viable to mix the two together and get actors and musicians. But yeah, in answer to your question, it's a bit of a tough skill. Some people have worked a lot harder than I have, and I look at them and I just have so much admiration and respect for them, because it is a very hard skill to perfect.
They're just well, a few weeks ago they did a new adaptation of Jane Eyre that was actor musicians as well.
Did you get to see it?
Yeah, one of the actors learned to play the accordion within 4 weeks.
No way.
That
Wow. Yeah, that's a skill to be able to do it in 4 weeks.
It was recorded, so it'll be coming out on, well, one of these at home DVDs soon.
Yeah, on a streaming platform somewhere maybe. Yeah, I'm sure.
But it was good to hear Jane Eyre in a new version.
Yeah.
And one of the reviews was the audience member wanted to go out and hit Mr. Rochester.
No way.
I wanted to get up and hit him.
Do you know, there was a funny story actually behind. So you know, at the end of shows, when actors will come out and do bows and that sort of thing. If you ever go and see a Shakespeare show, there's something at the end which is called the jig, which is a bit of a dance, and that it doesn't matter whether it's a comedy or a tragedy, they always do at the very end of the show, they do this little dance and then they do the bows. And it was put in there because before they had this little dance and the bows, back in 1600s, there was a version of Othello, and the guy that was playing Iago, who is, if you don't know, Othello is the villain character in it. He was so believable that one of the audience members at the end of it was so incensed by his character, they actually found the actor after the show, followed him down an alleyway and shot him and killed him. And since then, they then have now done this little bit of a dance and a bow to break that illusion between the character and the actor, because sometimes actors that are so convincing, back then in the 1600s, this audience member couldn't get his head around that he was an actor and that he wasn't actually following out, and he was acting in the show. And I just thought, what a brilliant story. And that's now why there's a bit of a jig dance at the end and some bows at the end of Shakespeare shows.
I do sometimes stop behind for the Q&A sessions, and the actors are completely different to what they are on stage.
Yeah, and I suppose that's probably the sign of a good actor, if you've seen a show where you then, when you see them in the Q&A, are completely different. So yeah.
I was going to ask what you think of captioned performance when the words come out. Do you worry you're not going to miss your words and someone else will see you miss them words?
That's a really good question, actually. As an audience member, I've actually never been. Are you talking about on stage? Do you mean
when the words come up at the side of the stage?
Yeah. I've actually never been to a captioned performance, but you have got a really good point, and it would mean that the actors have to be on it word for word. Now, you'd hope that the actors would be doing that anyway, and depending on who you're working with, really a playwright has spent so much time perfecting those words that they've written down that it's slightly disrespectful if you are kind of playing about with their words, or if you just get the general gist and then you try and make it up yourself. Really, what the playwright has done is they've spent hours and hours and hours perfecting and choosing what word goes here and what word goes there so that it leaves a certain effect. And so when I'm an actor, the way that I view it is my job is to bring those words to life, and it's not to loosely learn them and then play about with it and try and be an actor and a playwright at the same time. So I think, hopefully, I'd hope that most actors would be true to what is captioned at the side of the stage, but you never know, and those actors that do that will probably get caught out with a caption performance. And if you do, then let them know in the Q&A session after.
Has When you've been on stage, has anybody's phone ever gone off? Or does that put you off?
All the time. And it's a funny thing. When you're on stage performing, there's so many things that are going on in your head. I like to think of it as I've kind of got three different brains that are on stage at the time, and there's one that is completely invested in the character and what the character is doing in that scene. There's another one which is just thinking purely about my technical brain. So it might be if the audience is over here and I'm speaking with you, I would probably shuffle and kind of angle myself a little bit. So it's just a little technical thing so that the audience here can see me a bit more. And then the third one is the environment. And that's probably the hardest one because it's so unpredictable and every night it'll change. So for example, the show that I've just recently finished, Ruby and the Vinyl, we were up in across towards Hull in a place called Beverley for about a month, and every Tuesday or Thursday? Every Tuesday or Thursday they do the bell ringing at the churches that goes on for about an hour. So that third brain, which is kind of listening out for the environment, for phones going off, for maybe people chattering or something like that, for an hour, I've just got it. I can hear in the back of my head just ding, ding, ding of the bells going off all the time. And so it does, I notice it, but I suppose I like to see my job as it shouldn't interfere with the other brain, which is the character brain and the technical side of things. So there's times when phones have gone off and that sort of thing, and you can't really do that much about it. And I think audience members do feel that. I know I've been in the audience plenty of times when phones have gone off, and all you're thinking is, can you just click off and then put it away and we'll move on. And there was
a lot of comedians who act like Jason Mansford and people. Whenever like phones go off or people talk, they want to shout at them because they're used to comedy shows when you interact with the audience.
Yeah.
But they found it harder not to interact when they're acting. Like when they're on stage telling jokes, you can shout at the audience and have fun with them. But they can't in acting, they've got to keep in character.
Yeah, you are right. And it depends on what show you're doing. If you're doing let's say a Chekhov play or a Shakespeare play where Shakespeare is actually not a great example, but a Chekhov, which tends to be everything in the stage and all the characters and everything happens on the stage. Say, for example, a Shakespeare or, for example, a John Godber show, they interact with the audience so much that you break that fourth wall and the audience actually becomes another character in itself in the way that they react. And a bit like a comedian, I suppose. I was listening to Jimmy Carr's audiobook last week, and he was saying he knows his show when he goes on to do his comedy stand-up set so well. He knows it's going to be a good show, but when he goes on stage, the one thing he doesn't know is how the audience is going to interact with him every single night. And that's what he enjoys. He enjoys that riffing and that playing with the audience. And I think it's similar with that, with Shakespeare and with John Godber shows and many other playwrights where they include the audience. And so once you do break down that fourth wall barrier and you can talk with the audience, it makes it, and you do have that relationship, it makes it more interesting when something happens on a night, because there's a potential then to integrate it into the performance. As long as it's not taking away from the show too much, then it can benefit the show. And I think audiences like to know that what they're watching, they've come to the theatre rather than watch Netflix because they want to be involved and see something live in person. And when something that they do, maybe phone going off or anything else that happens, maybe there might be a heckle in a show, and integrating that in, it makes them go, oh wow, this is live, this is happening in real time. And I think people get a bit of a buzz from that as well. So it's good, if possible, without it detracting from the performance, to integrate that into the show, depending on circumstances for sure. But yeah, it's good if you can do it.
I went to see the play What Goes Wrong, and that was on Harry and Meghan's wedding day.
Yeah.
And there were some lines, well, there must have been one scene when And the man was upset and said, "What you upset for? Because I didn't get invited to Harry and Meghan's wedding."
Yeah,
But that wouldn't work any other time. It had to be on that day to
yeah,
make it funny and sensible.
exactly. And I think that show is a great example actually of how the audience are another character, and every single night there's so many things that will go wrong, and some of them are rehearsed, and sometimes there's some things that audience members might shout out, and then it gets integrated into the show, and I think it makes it feel so much more live and electric, and so much more entertaining to watch. So a great show. Did you get to see it?
Yeah.
Play That Goes Wrong.
It was a bit, well, George Reid Paul said it was funny, so I went because she said it.
Nice.
She doesn't seem easily pleased, George Reid Paul.
Yeah.
So if she enjoyed it, must have been good.
Yeah, and you went along and you enjoyed it.
A bit silly in places.
Sure.
Well, I'm not going to spoil it, but there was a scene with a fire extinguisher.
Yeah, I think I know exactly. I saw it a few years ago and absolutely loved it. It's so clever. And the company's been set up now for, I think, coming on to 10 years. It was actually a group of drama school students that set up the play. And they've now branched off into loads of different things. They've got the play that goes wrong, the bank robbery that goes wrong. I can't think of too many more off the top of my head, but there's
something about magic. What Paul Daniels?
Yeah, the magic that goes wrong. There's loads of them. A great franchise kind of theatre shows. I love it.
Did anybody or anything inspire you to want to act? Did you see a show and said, "I want to be an actor on a movie"?
Do you know what? Funnily enough, yeah, I growing up, one of my hometown theatres was a place called Wakefield Theatre Royal. Have you ever been to Wakefield? So Wakefield,
it's on my list to go to.
Yeah, it's an amazing theatre. And growing up, I did a little bit of amateur dramatics and was able to perform on the stage. But I'd normally, most of the time, be watching shows in the audience. And a lot of the time, there was John Godber shows that were in Wakefield Theatre Royal. And so growing up, I used to watch a lot of John Godber shows, and that was actually probably one of my big inspirations for wanting to go to the theatre, was to go and see those shows. And that's kind of what probably gave me inspiration to continue going at my craft, and to go and audition at drama school. And I didn't get in the first time, so then I spent a gap year off, and then I auditioned, got in again at drama school. And what was amazing is that now I've just done the tour of Ruby and the Vinyl, was to then go and perform on the stage in a John Godber show in my hometown theatre, and that's where we opened up, which was Wakefield Theatre Royal. And it just felt like a lovely full circle, that the theatre that inspired me when I was a kid, I'm now performing on that stage in a professional capacity. I've got a special place in my heart for Wakefield Theatre Royal, because it's inspired me so many times over the years. So yeah, that's probably my closest and dearest place to my heart for inspiration growing up.
I don't really want to mention the L word, but everything closed in lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I read somewhere you created a 99-second playlist.
Yeah, that was actually, that happened because of lockdown. So it was about, I think, maybe 2 or 3 days after Boris Johnson announced that there was going to be a lockdown and everything was going to close, theatres, music venues, well, everything across the UK. I wanted to create something for musicians, and I feel so honoured and so privileged that I've got so many friends and colleagues and people that I know who are incredible musicians. I wanted to try and create a platform where I could showcase their talent to other people that might not have heard it before. So I created the 99-second playlist, which was simply just a challenge that would release one video every single week, and every video had to be 99 seconds dead on. And so we released it one video a week, every week for about 20 weeks, which for me, that when I started it off, I thought, I'll be honest with you, I thought it was going to be maybe 3 or 4 weeks that we'd do it for. and my mum might just go, "Oh, that were good, that, George," and then would kind of stop doing it, and would just create a few videos. But so many people started to get behind it, and we had roughly every single week would kind of had a community of about 300 people that would tune in and watch the video every single week when we released it. And I just really enjoyed being able to showcase the talent that I have. And also it helped me become a better musician and I learned how to edit music, and I learned how to edit video. And so being able to practice those skills every single week and have a purpose and have something to lead towards was incredible. And I'm really grateful for everyone that got behind it. We had TV stations, we had radio stations, newspapers, people that were really starting to get behind it. And it was a really good creative project that kind of really took off quite well during lockdown. And I'm so pleased that it did, because it had so much positive feedback. And I think the reason why I kept doing it was I started to get messages from people saying, "I've not had a great day today, and I'm not really in a great place, but that video has really helped out, and it's put a bit of a smile on my face." And I thought, well, really, that's all we're trying to do with music, with anything in art form, is to try and create a better world and to try and bring a bit of happiness or a bit of thought provocation. But I suppose this was more just bringing a little bit of happiness through music to people in a time when it seemed such a tough world to live in. And it did really well. So I'm really quite proud of that 99-second playlist, actually.
Were you in anything, or had you anything planned before lockdown?
Did it have any shows that I was involved?
Yeah, were you in anything, or did anything?
Yeah, I was working on a Yorkshire show called No Horizon. I was working behind the scenes on the marketing side of it, and we had taken the show. It was written by my old headmaster, a guy called Andy Platt. He wrote it kind of maybe about 15-20 years ago, and his goal was always to get it to the West End. He then took it up to the Edinburgh Fringe maybe about 2015, and it did really well up there. It got the support from Elaine Page and from Chris Evans, who dubbed it Yorkshire's Les Mis. And then following that, we actually got it commissioned for a tour of the North. So we were heading to Barnsley Civic, Doncaster Cast, Harrogate Theatre, York Theatre Royal, Theatre by the Lake, across in the Lake District. We were going across to Halifax, and there was one more that I'm forgetting. I'll remember as soon as I finish this call now. But long story short, it was a Yorkshire story about a blind mathematician from the 1600s who got to the equivalent of Stephen Hawking, but because he was blind and visually impaired, he got forgotten through the history books, because at that point, if you were blind or if you had a disability, you weren't considered, you were expected to just go and work labour for your whole of your life, and your mathematical brain or any sort of cognitive excellence was never really showcased. And he made an incredible career, an incredible journey, ended up becoming the peer of Sir Isaac Newton down in Cambridge. A really amazing story, and is from my little Yorkshire town of Penistone. So it was really a community project and a community story that we ended up getting commissioned for this Northern tour. And we were about to open. We're about 2 days from opening at Barnsley Civic, and then COVID happened and everything all got closed down. So it was about 2 days away from actually happening, and it was maybe a year and a half of work that had gone into it beforehand. But there's so many examples of that, of shows where there's so much work and they just got closed down just before they're opened. So that was my that was quite a sad thing. But hopefully, on a bit more of a positive note, hopefully we think that maybe next year or maybe the year after, there's going to be a tour of No Horizon. So hopefully that story does get told, because I think it's an incredible story that deserves to be heard far and wide.
So you've just been in John Godber's musical.
Ruby and the Vinyl, yeah.
Hi, I'm Millie Gaston and I'm playing the role of Lily. I play Ruby in Ruby and the Vinyl, and I've also written the songs to contribute towards the show.
Hello, my name's George and I'm playing the character of Tom.
The script is incredibly touching and moving, but it's also classic Godber, so there'll be moments that you'll be really enjoying it, laughing, and then the next second you'll be feeling the same emotions as the couple, and you'll go on the journey with them.
If I could describe Ruby and the Vinyl in 3 words, it would be heartwarming, lovely, and vintage.
Ruby and the Vinyl is also a show which is perfect for the time. I think after COVID, people will be able to connect back in the theatre, but also be uplifted and go away just feeling great. Musical, journey, and feel good.
So I think this show is for people that remember the 60s, 70s, 80s, that are into vinyl, that might have had a record player, but also young people. It's very centred around Netflix and rom-coms and that sort of thing.
The music is really bluesy, it has a jazz influence. It's gig theatre, so a lot of the songs are performed in gig style.
I think that people will leave the theatre with a smile on the face and they'll feel like they've just had a big, lovely, long hug for about 2 hours.
Fun, uplifting and touching.
The music is one of the best parts about the show. So Ruby is absolutely incredible and the songs are genuinely, genuinely beautiful. I can't wait for people to hear it.
We hope you enjoy the show!
How did that come about, and how did auditions go with not being allowed in rooms?
Really good question. So the way that it works with auditions is I will get an agent who will get all the breakdowns through, and if you're looking at casting a play or something like that, you would normally reach out to agents and say, here's the breakdown, can you submit anyone for auditions? So the John Godber company put down the breakdown, my agent replied to that, he got me an audition for it. I did the first audition, which was just a self-tape, which is essentially, I just set up I actually did it in this room, set up a camera, and you just have a monologue that you will learn, and then you'll do it to the camera. So I didn't have to travel anywhere because of COVID for that. I could just do it from home. I then submit that, and I got a recall from that. And the recall was actually meant to be up in Hull. So I booked all my train tickets and everything like that. And a couple of days before the recall, I got COVID. So I obviously emailed them and I said, I'm so sorry, I've got COVID. I can't come to the audition. And I was about to leave it there. And then I added in one line. I said, if you are still doing Zoom auditions, because that was generally how people would audition people, would just be over Zoom when we had COVID. And I said, if you are doing Zoom auditions, please let me know, and I'd be more than happy to do a Zoom audition. And they came back and they said, yeah, that's totally fine. We can do a Zoom audition. So got everything set up. A couple of days later, I dialed in, got my laptop, did a song, did the monologue. And what was really funny is because I had COVID, I was absolutely shattered on the day. It really knocked me for 6 when I had COVID. So I woke up in the morning, jumped on the Zoom call, and it was kind of one of those things, do you know, where before the Zoom call, you're kind of just really drudging about. And then as soon as you get on the Zoom call, then it's kind of like, hello, you okay? It's like all this, this nice energy. So did the audition, it went really well. There was such a welcoming company. And that was one of my first auditions with them. I've met them a couple of times before, but every single time they were so welcoming, and they really do put you at ease. So I got a lot of time and a lot of respect for the John Godber company and the way that they treat the audition process. And so did the audition over Zoom and did the classic thing that everyone does. As soon as you finish a Zoom call, you kind of finish by going, okay, yeah, see you later. And so as soon as I finished, literally jumped straight into bed and slept the rest of the day, and then got a call maybe about a week or so later, and they offered me the role, and that's kind of how it went, and it went on from there, and then just finished last month or the month before on the tour.
I was going to say, are you a fan of John's work?
Yeah. I think I've always been a fan, as I said before, mainly because of the way that it inspired me growing up to continue to pursue acting. And then since now being in one of the shows and working with the family, I've got so much more love for it. And I said to Jane, the director, I said, I'd fallen in love with the way that they work and the way that their plays are structured so much that I said, I was actually a bit annoyed at them by the end, because now any other play that I go and do, it's not going to be their structure that I absolutely love. So I think I fell in love with it even more, having been on the inside of the process and actually had that privilege of being able to work with the John Godber Company one-on-one on a play. And then I've seen a couple recently that did Happy Jack across in Stoke, and that was with John and Jane. They are phenomenal at what they do, because they've been doing it for so many years. They know it inside out, and they make it look so easy. And what was amazing was watching that and knowing things from the rehearsal process that they'd said. I said, oh wow, I see what you mean. I understood it in the rehearsal process, but once you see it in person and them doing it in a show, it cements it a lot more. So really love their work. They've just done Teachers across in Hull, at Hull Truck, and Martha, who is their daughter, she was in that. She's a phenomenal actress as well. She did some understudy work on Ruby and the Vinyl, and she was amazing. So I think since performing in it, I've started to fall in love with it even more, which is frustrating, because now anything else that isn't that, I'm kind of like, it's good, but it's not quite John Godber. But it just shows that they've really honed the craft and they really know what they're doing with the shows. And another thing, their shows, I don't know about you, I love seeing short shows that aren't going to be 3-4 hours long. And a lot of the time, John Godber shows are maybe an hour 40 to 2 hours, maybe max. And so you can go along, you can see the show, you get the story, and it's not drawn out and it doesn't become self-indulgent. And that's for me recently, I've just been loving anything that has been kind of an hour and 40 to 2 hours that cracks on and gets on and isn't too self-indulgent. I love it. Are you a fan of a short show, or do you prefer them to be longer?
Short, I got a short attention span.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have, and I think as soon
I
as
wouldn't go to a show that had 2 intervals. That sounds long, isn't it?
Oh, I've done that before. I did a show, it was called Angels in America, maybe 2017, 2016 that I saw it. And that had 2 intervals, I think, and each act was maybe, I think it was about an hour and a half each. So it ended up being something like 4 or 5 hours that I was at the theatre. And don't get me wrong, it was a good show, but there was certainly some points where I'll just be honest, my attention span went slightly. And so I think if you're doing a show that is going to be 4 or 5 hours long, you've really got to be able to grip someone for 4 or 5 hours, which is an incredibly hard task to do. I think just naturally, because the human brain will wander after a little while. And so I think that's probably the reason why short shows tend to work quite well, because they crack on with it and they understand how the human brain works and how it might wander if you don't just get down to the crux of it. But if someone can do a 4 or 5 hour show and hold me the whole time, then hats off to them, fair dues, because that is not an easy thing to do.
What other shows have you been in? Have you done any TV work?
Good question. So I trained in film, TV and stage when I was at drama school. Since graduating, I actually went into I kind of specialised a bit more into Shakespeare. That was my big passion when I left drama school, and it started from Shakespeare's Globe Theatre down in London, and I was part of something called the Sam Wanamaker Festival, which was a weekend where you then perform on the Sunday, a weekend of workshops, and you perform on the Sunday yourself and someone else from your drama school. And every drama school has a representative. So I was the representative for 2018 for GSA, which was my drama school. Went along and fell in love with the Globe Theatre. Absolutely loved it there. Learned so much from the workshops that when I kind of came out of drama school, I said to my agent, I said, I'd really like to, if we can sort of hone a little bit, I'd like to be put up for more Shakespeare stuff. That was my big thing coming out of drama school. So once I finished, graduated, I was very lucky that one of the first auditions I did, I got the job with a company called Young Shakespeare Company, and went on tour for about 3 or 4 months with Macbeth, and I was playing the part of Banquo. And that was an incredible experience. I was with 4 of the kindest, most amazing, beautiful souls that I've ever met. And I had them in my cast. I had an incredible cast the first tour that I did straight out of drama school when we did Macbeth. And I loved it because I got to visit so many amazing places in the UK. We got to travel about for 3 months and perform Shakespeare and hone what I loved doing and do it every single day. And then from that, I then got offered another contract to do another tour of Romeo and Juliet. So I played Tybalt in that second tour, and also with an incredible cast. I was really lucky that on both of my tours, I was with 2 casts that were just really beautiful people. Because it makes a big difference when you're spending 3 months touring the country with someone, and you're waking up in hotels, you're spending the whole day with them, you're performing together, you then driving to another city, you're then eating out together, and then you're going back to another hotel. It's a really time-consuming and it can be quite draining. So it's really important that you do that with people that are really great people. And I was lucky that the company had cast really amazing people. So had an amazing two back-to-back tours with the Young Shakespeare Company with amazing casts. And then just to touch on the film and TV sort of thing, did a few commercials. Never done any TV yet, in terms of like whether it's any soaps or any TV series for like Netflix or Amazon or anything like that, mainly because I was kind of specializing a bit more in Shakespeare. And then I did a few short film projects here and there, and did a couple of adverts in the meantime, and then we kind of got the pandemic that hit. So that's kind of a brief overview really of what I've done since drama school. My couple of Shakespeare tours, a few adverts, a few short films and that sort of thing, but hopefully soon TV, because I've said within the past 2 months to my agent that that's one thing that I want to kind of start pushing towards now. So hopefully that'll start coming up in the future.
What kind of TV would you want to be in a soap? It's a shame Holby City's finished, actually.
It is, yeah. You are right. It is such a shame. And I've got so many friends at the moment that are currently in soaps all across the country. And they are, I have so much admiration for them because they work so hard and so many hours. And you've got to, if you think about, say, for example, Coronation Street, you've got an episode going out every single day. And so they've got to turn those episodes around and film them so quickly. And so the actors, I've got a friend in one at the moment, and I was chatting with him a couple of months ago, and he said he was going into, he had his script that day and he had to go and film it the next day. So he had a day to suddenly learn this script. And I said, that's quite a quick turnaround for learning scripts. And he says, honestly, once you get into it, it's so easy. it's so easy, and it just kind of starts to come a bit second nature. So I'd love to be able to, I'd love to do a soap. I'd love to be able to hone that craft, because I think it is a real skill to be able to turn around those episodes. And I think it's a real great challenge to be able to turn around good quality work very quickly. So I've got a lot of respect for people that do soaps, for how quickly they can do stuff.
How long would you stay for? Because Ken Barlow's been there years and years.
Yeah, well, it depends on whatever the part is that I audition for. If it's maybe, say, for example, a guest, what they call a guest role. So, for example, in Doctors or something, or Casualty, in one of these soaps, you might have guest roles where you just have a single episode where the storyline is sort of based around you, or your character, sorry, I should say. And then you've got the main characters that are always there, that are there for years and years and years. And those will be the people that will interact with that guest storyline. So it depends on what it is. It could be a guest role that come up. It could be a reoccurring role. It all depends on whatever's out there. And it's also about making sure that part, as much as I would love to go and do a soap, it's got to be right for the producers and for the casting director and for the show. It can't just be me kind of going in and saying, I'd love to go and do a soap, because if there's no part that doesn't look right with me, then I'm not going to be seen for that show. So it's just a continuous kind of wait to kind of see what comes up in the roles. And it might be that for a year or so nothing really comes up, and then suddenly you get 3, 4, 5 roles that suddenly come up that could be suited to you. So it depends. We'll see what happens in the future.
I'll keep my eye open for you. When you get sent scripts, what makes you say yes to the role?
That is a really good question. I was chatting about it with a friend last week. Sorry, actually this weekend. And initially, I think coming out of drama school, I was more bothered about getting credits on my CV than I was about the script itself. And I think now it's so much more of a decision on my half about whether I'd creatively want to do something. And it depends on what the script's about. If it's about something that I passionately believe in, it's going to make me want to do the script more. So, for example, a couple of years ago, this was just before the pandemic, there was a play called The Glee Club, which is based in Doncaster. The show is based in Doncaster in a mining town. And I read the script, and it was the first time ever that I'd actually cried reading a script, and not seeing something, just reading the actual script. And I came away thinking, what an incredible, incredible story, an incredible show this could be. And so that was probably one of the things that when I went into the audition, I thought, I would love to do this show because I feel really passionate about the story, and it's moved me. And so I'd like to pass that emotion that I've been able to feel and pass that through to an audience if I was lucky enough to get the opportunity to do that show. And I didn't get offered the role in the end. I got quite far through the audition process, which was really promising and really great. And I actually went to see the show when it on press night in Doncaster at the Cast Theatre, and it was an incredible show. So I think for me, as you start to go through your career, the scripts that you read, that you go, I would love to do this. And for me, the Glee Club is probably going to be always one that I will have in the back of my head that I would love to do at some point in the future, because I think it's an amazing show. And the one that they did just before the pandemic was also incredible, and it got cut off short because of the COVID pandemic, and it's just recently in 2022 done another tour now, and I've heard reviews are also going great for that. So good for them, because it's an amazing show. So I think that'd probably be one on the back burner that I'd love to do.
You think we'll ever get back to having cast of plus 10? Or do you think we'll always be stuck with 3 or 4 actors now?
Sorry, say the question again.
Will we ever get back to having, like, Northern Broadsides have 12 or 13 actors? And will we ever get back to having that, or do you think we'll be stuck with 3 or 4 forever?
That's a really good question, and I think it boils down to, if I'm being brutally honest, the finances, because producing theatre is an extremely risky business model. You've got to put a lot of money into it, and sometimes if a show doesn't sell, you will lose money on the show. And so I think when someone's producing a piece of theatre, or they're saying, okay, I'm going to fund this show, one of the big concerns straight away is how to reduce that cost of everything that's going out. And I totally understand it, because at the end of the day, as much as people love the art, it's got to also financially work as a business model. And so producers won't just, and it's sad that it is this way, but it is the way that the world works. Producers won't just chuck money at a show if they don't think it's going to work. And so one of the big ways of reducing those costs is reducing the amount of actors. If you can have 3 or 4 actors and you're only paying 3 or 4 weekly wages, that's a lot less than if you're paying, say, for example, 15 or 16 actors. And so if you are paying 15 or 16 actors, that's great. And then you'll get a different atmosphere for the show. But the producers also got to be a lot more confident that they're going to get the seats in and get the income coming in. So I think you'll probably see bigger numbers in cast members on the shows that are maybe more well known. So for example, musicals, for example, they've got a big audience base that will go, I know The Book of Mormon, I know Les Mis, I know Wicked, I know Waitress, I know these names of these shows, so I'm happy to go and buy a ticket. And so the producer that's putting that on, because they know that there's probably going to be more bums on seats, they go, okay, I'm happy to employ 15 or 16 actors rather than 3 or 4, because I know that I'm going to get the ticket sales coming in. So in a sad way, it does boil down to the economics of it. And in a perfect world, it'd be amazing if we could have really huge casts on stage. But for some shows, it actually works slightly better having 3 or 4. So for example, Teachers, that I just saw at Hull Truck a few weeks ago, they've got 3 actors on stage, but they play, I think they play like 20, 30 roles maybe of different characters, and it works so well. And it's all about creating that imagination in an audience's brain, I think. And you can do it with 3 people playing 20 parts. If you do it creatively and you get it spot on, that is amazing. Or there's another way, in which case you can hire 20 actors to do each role individually, and it gives a bit of a different atmosphere. But yeah, I think it does boil down to economics at the end of the day.
Politics, do you think, well, I don't know how to say this without being rude, but do you think the arts
I think I know where this is going. Go on.
Do you think the Arts Council should, trying to be kind, rather than fund one theatre in London, do you think they should give money out to everybody?
My answer is unanimously yes. I think regional theatre needs to be funded more, and I'd be in favour of redistributing the funding that is currently in London to regional theatres. There's been a bit of an uproar in the industry in the past month or 2 months. The artistic director of the National Theatre came out and said that he thought that funding should be just within London, and we should stop redistributing it out, because there's so much demand for audiences in London. And I've seen the regional theatre the shows, the incredible shows that are put on at theatres all around the country. And I would love to see more of them back in, because I'm so passionate about Yorkshire, I'm so passionate about the North and it being underfunded with the arts. I'd love to see more investment made on a government level and on an arts council level in the community that I grew up, really. And I think that's probably the same for most people. They'd love to, I think I'd just love to know that there's kids growing up in where I grew up that are equally being inspired by shows and have that exposure to the art. And I was really lucky that there were shows when I was growing up that were touring through our theatres, or our theatres were putting on, and I was able to go and see those shows and get inspired by them. And I think over the years that funding has slowly started to reduce, and it means that kids aren't going to be able to see theatre as much or see as good quality theatre. So in answer to your question, I'd love to see it. Whether it will happen, I think it'll be a slow thing that will happen, but the Arts Council have recently said that they're going to start to distribute out more money to regional theatres, which I think is a really good step, and I take my hat off to them for making that step forward. And I think we can keep heading in that direction. That'd be amazing.
London's a bit touristy pricey. So now they're going to charge hundreds of pounds to see them.
Did you see there was a show in London a few weeks ago, and it got so much stick in the press for it. They had the stall seats were 400 quid for one ticket.
Yeah, I read that.
It's awful. Like there's two sides of the coin, which I understand actually from both sides of it, and bear with me on that, because what I mean is it is unbelievable to charge £400 for a ticket for a show, and expect that that's going to be able to be payable by the everyman working class that might want to see theatre. And so by putting the prices up that much, it's not going to be accessible to people like you and me that will want to go and see theatre. Having said that, you'd hope that the producers would take that £400 per ticket and use some of that money to offer maybe more £20 tickets or £15 tickets, or increase wages or increase the standards within the industry of pay across the actors and across not just the actors, actually the creative teams within theatre, because theatre can sometimes be a really underpaid, with some companies, not all, with some companies can be a really underpaid industry to work in. And so if we're trying to make sure that there's cheap tickets and there's good standards within the industry, economics wise, that money needs to come from somewhere. And so I understand charging ridiculous amounts of money if the upper and middle class are willing to pay for that. If a lawyer that is earning, I don't know, some crazy amount of money is willing to pay £400 for a ticket in the centre of the stalls, then I'm quite happy for them to pay that money if it means that then there's going to be more seats that are cheaper, that are going to be available to the everyman. And it also means that the industry standard is going to be brought up a little bit more if that happens. If it's just a case of £400 then goes into the pocket of the producers and it doesn't get redistributed out anywhere, probably not so much in favour of that. But yeah, London can be silly prices at sometimes.
Get the tourists in and see how much they pay, and then if they don't fill the seats, they get cancelled. Like that Harry Hill X Factor thing.
Yeah.
That got cancelled after a few weeks.
Yeah, and it's a shame when stuff does get cancelled. And I think the reason why they were able to charge £400 a ticket is because they were selling out all the shows. So when they had a few tickets that came available, they said, well, let's bump the price up and see what the most people are buying, are willing to pay. And really, at the end of the day, that just comes down to supply and demand. And so I understand it from both sides of the coin.
I think London's more of a money maker than actual. Don't seem to have an interest in art, they're just interested in filling the pockets.
You're absolutely right. And it's the market that is, I think, because London is so expensive anyway, it has that sort of reputation for being a very money-making city. And I'm generalizing, obviously. There's certainly some companies in London that do not see it as a money-making venture, but I think those companies are maybe, and I am really generalizing here, I think those companies are really focused on the art as opposed to the money. But some companies are, some companies aren't. But I certainly think in regional theatres in places like Yorkshire and Manchester and, well, anywhere across any regional theatre, generally doesn't tend to be a money-making venture, because the money, if I'm being brutally honest, really isn't there in theatre to be able to make it a money-making venture. But London does have the atmosphere to be able to do that.
Yeah, I know with theatre where I'm from, they were socially distanced, but they weren't making any money, so they've had to do it full distance again.
Yeah.
They had plays on, but they weren't making any money. They were just there to keep our spirits up.
Yeah. Have you been able to see any socially distanced shows?
Yep, you can only get a handful anyway.
Yeah. We had a couple when we were at Beverley. And
it's not the same.
No, they're not. But what I found amazing was they sold out so quick. They sold out more than the full capacity one. So there's obviously that demand there for a socially distanced show. So I think being able to offer it is really important. And I think it's really great for companies that are offering those socially distanced shows, because there's people that have underlying conditions, and COVID is still about at the moment. As much as you might walk out into the street and not think it, with no one really wearing masks that much, and almost everything is opened back to normality, there's still COVID about, and there's still people that are at higher risk of it. So I think it's important to recognize that and offer socially distant shows if we can as an industry.
When you're in I can't remember what it's called, in Ruby and the Vine.
Yeah.
The audience wearing masks. How did you know they were enjoying themselves? They can't really laugh with the mask on.
Yeah, and I hear what you're saying. When we had the socially distanced ones, most people were wearing masks. And when we didn't, we had a bit of a split, actually, of maybe, I'd probably say 50% of the audience wore masks, 50% didn't. It slowly, as we went through the tour, kind of probably shifted more towards not wearing masks. And I think on the shows that were maybe socially distanced and people had masks, they were probably more aware of the people around them. And obviously, because they've gone to a socially distant show, there's a reason for that. And so I think when there was maybe a funny moment in the play, or I think maybe they were slightly more aware of laughing out loud, because obviously laughing could potentially spread COVID. So yeah, it's a thing to consider, I suppose, when you go to a socially distanced performance, that people might be a bit more wary and therefore a little bit more muted to it. But people, we still got great feedback after the show, from whether it was with masks or without. So hopefully it didn't hamper things too much.
Just about finished. I wanted to ask, is there anything you want to add?
No, I think you've done a great job. Some of those were great questions, and you kind of kept it flowing really nice as well, which was great. So no, I've got absolutely no other questions to ask you, other than just say thank you. Thanks for inviting me on.
No, we said 15 minutes. We've been on an hour.
It's all right. I'm more than happy to give you my time. I hope it's been helpful.
Yeah.
And I think you're doing a great job with the podcast. I really wish you the best for the future, and I hope it does well for you.
Is there something to, like you said, focus on, really?
Yeah. It's like we're saying, I was talking about the 99-second playlist, having a project that you're working on. And I'm sure you probably found that you're now getting better at editing and video production. And we were saying last time we met about how how long it takes to do all that sort of thing. And I'm sure you're getting better and better every single episode that you do with the podcast. But it's great that you've got something to focus on and that you're getting better and better at it. So yeah, keep it up. I think it's a great thing.
I have to get you on the game when you're drinking in the Rovers or something.
When we're in the soaps, then drop me a message, drop me a text, and I'll come back on for you. Rightio. Thank you so much, Ian.
It's fine. Thank you.
Look at the drama, poor Lily and Tom. It could have happened to anyone. With Neil and Ivan, Bonnie and Clyde, square eyes on TV like the zombies have arrived. Always together, must never be discussed. Can you be in love with someone you've never touched? Dressy and messy for Lily and Tom.